Welcome, folks. You are amped up with Cliff Schecter. I am Cliff Schecter, but I'm here with David Shuster. It should be named after him because he's more talented. He's the former Emmy, not former Emmy. He won an Emmy as a former anchor at MSNBC, CNN, other places. And then we have John Fugelsang of
Current TV. That's where John and I work
Right.
together at Current TV. Can you believe
Right.
this?
These guys at Current.
Nobody knows what Current TV is, but that's okay. John,
I went on as a guest, and if they did invested money in that, like the right does in things, and said like Rupert Murdoch, we don't need to make a profit for 10 years, it would have worked. But we need to make a profit in 2 years, or we walk away on the left. That's what we do. We'll get to that and everything else. I love John. John is a comedian. He's hilarious. He is an author. He is a podcaster. I believe over at Allison Gill's place. What do you do, John? You do everything.
I do a show every night on Sirius XM Progress.
That's right. He does a show every night. Sirius XM.
The prime time programming for Sirius XM Progress 127, and I do a lot of podcasts for a lot of people. And my show is also available as a free daily podcast for those who don't subscribe to Sirius XM.
And I'm really happy John is on here because the live is a little bit late, and I fell asleep one night, and he should kick my rear for that. But
I'm thrilled, and thank you for having me here because it is my first book, and so I'm learning how to whore myself in a whole new capacity. So thank you.
Well, you've done so well whoring yourselves and so many others that I kid, John. No, in all seriousness, you're just a great performer all around, and now author. I believe it is The Separation of Church and Hate.
Yes,
is the name of the book. Very easy to remember. Which
the full title is Separation of Church and Hate, A Sane Person's Guide to Taking Back the Bible from Fundamentalists, Fascists, and Flock-Fleecing Frauds. That's the full title, but yes.
A man who likes alliteration, like myself. Very good.
It's a book for any believer of any religion, any atheist, or any agnostic who's ever going to have to deal with a right-wing Christian fundamentalist or Christian nationalist, and it gives you tips on how to beat them up with their own Bible that they use as a prop.
Sadly, there's one around every corner today, and I'll kick it to John for the first question. But I think we need to tell people how important this book is, how good it is, because if you learn to do what John does, before I say kick it to John, I meant to David. Right. I'm getting old. Sorry, folks. A little bit like Trump. But in any case, if you do what he did, you also would have kicked Scott Jennings' ass on CNN the way John Fugelsang did the other night. By using their Bible, they love to trot out, and then when you give them the details, they're like, "Oh, wait, Jesus said that? No, he was for supply side assault rifles, right?" So in any case, go ahead, David, jump on in and let's chat.
Well, first of all, I want to say, John, how you doing?
It's great to see you, David. What a great pleasure. You're one of my favorite people in media, and you are someone who you have just way too much integrity. I got to tell you.
I appreciate it. So I'm not, to be clear, my father, and I learned this from reading your book, or at least the synopsis of your book, your mom was a nun, your father was a Franciscan brother, I think it was.
Yes, sir.
So I was raised Jewish, but my understanding of Christianity and Jesus and the gospel sort of comes down to this. There's sort of two major teachings of Jesus in the gospel, and that is believe in Jesus and then do unto your neighbor as you would do unto yourself. That's the sort of the double thing right there. Do I have that about right? Because to me, that sort of then informs why so much of what people claim to be in the Bible is and used for political purposes on the right is nonsensical.
Yeah. Well, there's really three big Jesus teachings, right? Okay. The first one is he reduced the 10 Commandments to 2. And he said the 2 commandments are love God, the Father, with all your mind, all your body, all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. Reduce the 10 commandments to 2, which means Jesus probably couldn't get hired to work in the Louisiana public school system now. Then, of course, Sermon on the Mount, which Fox News would call the woke virtue signaling on the Mount. It doesn't really correlate with Donald Trump too much. The whole thing is about humility, not your club dominating the local school board. It's not about power. And that's how you know that MAGA Christianity is the opposite of Jesus's ministry. And the whole point of the book is you don't need to believe in Jesus or any part of the Bible as literal magical fact to use it against these frauds, because they haven't read the Bible and they're counting on you not having read it. So I wrote this for anyone of any faith any atheist, if you have a relative, a coworker, someone in your social media feed. But the big one, David, is Matthew 25, which is where Jesus gives his true marching orders as to what would make a Christian nation. And this is where it's called the judgment of nations. For some, it's called the parable of the sheep and the goats. But it's essentially where Jesus talks about the end of the world, where he will gather the individuals and nations and separate them, the sheep and the sheep go to heaven, the goats burn in hell for all eternity. And the sheep are the ones who he has 4 criteria. You know, when I was poor, when I was sick, where were you? We didn't see you. That when you didn't do it for the least of my people, you didn't do it for me. Jesus gives 4 criteria to individuals and nations: taking care of the poor, taking care of the sick, being kind to prisoners, and welcoming the stranger. And that's it.
So
That's
alligator
Jesus'
Alcatraz wouldn't be really like a Jesus thing. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, indeed. And I'm happy to go deep on that one. But Jesus doesn't give a rat's ass about how often you go to church, how much money you give, how loudly you scream at women outside health clinics, how you welcome the stranger, care for the individuals and nations. Care for the sick, care for the poor, welcome the stranger, kind to prisoners. So it's like his memo to the Heritage Foundation. And this is why you'll never hear right-wing Christians quote this ever. Instead, they'll fight to have the
They like to
Jewish
go back to
commandments.
our Old Testament for the Jews.
Yeah, the Jewish,
they like
the
us.
Hebrew commandments, which again, Donald Trump has violated all 10. So when they put these up in public school classrooms, be it Oklahoma,
sometimes in
Indiana,
one day. Yeah, go ahead.
He's violated all 10. So it's a great way of teaching kids that your parents who voted for Trump don't believe any of this.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the Old Testament there is the, you know, you shouldn't lay down with a man. Okay, but Jesus in the New Testament, Jesus never speaks about that ever, right?
You want to go there? You want to go there? Yeah. Well, so
I mean, I would think that if Jesus had been concerned about, you know, gay, lesbian, whatever, he would have said something about it, right?
Wouldn't he? Well, actually, he did. First off, you're talking about Leviticus,
right.
And that was God. You know, if the 10 Commandments was God's instructions, Leviticus was the terms and conditions that come later. And it was his tips, essentially, for the Hebrews wandering 40 years in the desert with no refrigeration or antibiotics or Wi-Fi, how to keep their tribe numbers up. So that's where you have don't sleep with a man as with another man. It's an abomination, right? Seems pretty airtight, except it also says you have to kill people who commit adultery in Leviticus 20:10. So I'll let the Secret Service know you're coming for Mr. Trump, okay? So no one follows it. Again, if you're a Christian, you follow Jesus, who brought a new covenant. That's his whole thing. The whole selling point for Christianity 2,000 years ago was it's not the same as traditional Judaism. You keep your foreskin and have bacon, you know? And Jesus brings a new covenant. So it's a different kind of pact between God and people. And that's the beauty of it. And in Jesus' new covenant, you don't get to kill anybody. You don't get to stone anyone to death. You have to love the people you hate. And when it comes to the same-sex thing, you're right, David. He doesn't talk about it per se, but I'll give you a couple of instances where he does. If we can take 60 seconds.
Oh,
Here's
you take as much time as you need, John.
First off, our right-wing friends love to use Matthew 19, where Jesus says, male and female, he made them. A man will leave his parents and cling to his wife. Male and female, he made them. And they use this to argue that transgender people deserve to be treated horribly and that gay people can't marry. The reality is, Matthew 19 is when Jesus is explaining how he is overturning the divorce laws of Moses. Under the Mosaic law, a guy could kick his wife to the curb when he no longer delighted in her. In Deuteronomy, it's allowed. You're bored of her, get rid of her. And you can also have as many wives as you want if you can afford it. Okay, that
sounds like a very Donald Trump passage, yes.
Very much so. But Jesus comes out and says, I'm telling you here, unless your wife, you know, Moses let you do this because your hearts were hard. Jesus says, unless your wife cheats on you, if you dump her, you're committing adultery. And the apostles are all freaked out by this, saying, oh, maybe we don't want to get married now. But this is Jesus being a feminist. Because divorce could be a death sentence for women. If she didn't have family to go live with, her only options were prostitution or begging. Because
you were property. Women were basically,
right. And women couldn't legally be educated. It was very rare they worked. They could inherit money. Jesus's ministry was financed by women. which is a part of the Bible they never tell you. So Jesus says, unless you do that, then you're an adulterer. Male and female, he made them. You're stuck together. He wasn't saying be mean to the gays. The passage is anti-heterosexual divorce. And this is what the Donald Trump fans are citing to be mean to the gay people in the name of Jesus. Now, the second thing is the story of the centurion. It's a great story. And when you're a kid, you see this in Jesus of Nazareth. Ernest Borgnine plays him. The Roman centurion's slave was sick and Jesus healed him because Jesus loves everyone. We're taught all this stuff as kids before we even understand what Roman occupation of Judea means. The Jewish people had no freedom at all in this time. They were occupied by the only white people in the whole Bible, the Romans, or the only people we could call white. So it was huge because the centurions are the ones who actually killed Jesus. They're the ones who crucified him. We've been taught that the Jews killed Jesus. The Jews had no power over the Roman Empire.
I don't know. I saw Mel Gibson's film, and he tried to sort of convince me that I might have been a part of killing him.
If you believe it, Pontius Pilate gives Jesus a fucking foot massage in that movie. It's like, we feel so bad we have to scourge this poor fella, but those all-powerful Jews are making us crucify him on a Roman cross at the Roman execution field, and the Roman soldiers mock his Judaism. Look what the Jews made us do. Okay, the Romans are the bad guys in all of this. So for this centurion to come up to Jews when they're occupying their land and say, can you please heal my slave? Already, it's a huge story. But in the original Greek, the word he uses isn't slave, it's pais, beloved boy. Now, what do we know about the Romans? We know these pagans would leave their wives at home and bring boys on the road with them. The Roman Empire did this. The Vatican did this. This is a part of the evil Roman Empire that the Vatican has actually kept alive. Having sex with boys was not considered gay. You were the dominant partner. It was for pleasure. You see this to this day in the culture of the Bakabas in Afghanistan. Men have been doing this forever. So that was what he was saying. Will you come to my house, homeless Jewish mystic faith healer, and heal my teenage lover? Which explains why the apostles were probably thrilled about this. Jesus doesn't think twice. He doesn't care that this guy's a colonizer. He doesn't care that this guy's oppressing his own people. He doesn't care that this guy has sex with other males. He's like, you have faith, kid's healed, and that's it. So it's a revolutionary story about how Jesus really does mean bless the people who persecute you. It's another reason why I can't believe Trump fans identify with this guy. He's a prop they wave around. And like many people who were raised in the Christian faith, I got tired of seeing my parents' religion used as cover for cruelty and douchebaggery. And so I wanted to write a book that was all about how, even if you're an atheist, if you're opposing the MAGA agenda, most likely on most of the issues that divide us, Jesus is on your side, whether he's real or not.
All right. So here's the thing, right? John, I mean, obviously people have used religion for, millennia to persecute others. We had crusades.
Always.
Inquisition.
And always the fundamentalists, never the liberal Jews, never the liberal Muslims, never the liberal Christians, always the right-wing fundamentalists of every religion.
Right. And so what I was going to bring up is we did have an incredible period of time here in the United States, I think most prominently of Martin Luther King Jr., where the actual message of Jesus was used to forward that we should feed kids, that we should treat everyone with equality. And that obviously, I mean, it's not just I have a dream speech. Listen, any of it's infused with, New Testament kind of language. How did they successfully steal that away? How were they able? I mean, I know Falwell comes around 78 with a moral majority, but between, let's say,
2,000 years sooner.
Go for it.
When Rome took over. Suddenly it ceased being a pro-love, pro-service Jewish splinter sect. When Rome takes over, it goes from being a persecuted minority to persecuting minorities, starting with the pagans. By the time you get to the Crusades, you're now seeing Jesus used as justification for violence. Okay, gone are the messages of love and peace from the homeless Jewish carpenter. And it's about domination, power, and control. And because we're doing it for Jesus, we're doing it for God, and that's how they've always rationalized it. It's always throughout history about our power. Oh, but we're doing it for him. So St. Francis fought in the Crusades and then renounced war and turned against it. Okay. Doctrine of discovery, go. The church says loot all, pillage all nations for God. So Columbus is slaughtering all of these indigenous people in the shadow of a cross. The first act of protest by a white person in the Western Hemisphere was Bartolomeo de las Casas, the Catholic priest Columbus brought over. A Roman Catholic priest was the first person to protest domination and racist cruelty in this hemisphere. And that's the whole history of the religion. There's Christians doing incredibly evil shit, and Christ followers and their allies of all religions fighting back the batshit. Slavery existed in this country because Christianity said it was of God. We are the only nation on the earth where our history is completely intertwined with white supremacy and Christianity. No other religious nation has what we have, where white supremacy and the religion are completely twisted together. And who was it that pushed back against the Christians? It's Christ followers like Frederick Douglass, the Quakers, Harriet Tubman. So we get segregation. And that was there because Christians enforced it. When I first debated Jerry Falwell, when I was a kid on Bill Maher's show, I didn't even know that Falwell had been a segregationist who had opened whites-only schools.
Right.
All I knew was he was a Christian leader because the TV taught me that. It took years for me to discover, oh my God, they were fucking segregationists. And when that happened, yes, a Baptist minister named Martin Luther King and tons of other allies, both Christian, non-Christian, lots of rabbis in civil rights movement, lots of atheists, right? So throughout the whole history of the faith, it's always been the people who actually followed Jesus, the liberals and the moderates, and there are many allies, beating back the batshit Christians. How many people have talked their parents and grandparents out of a lot of homophobia in the last 30 years? I mean, this is the whole struggle of religion. So yes, it's responsible for all the bad stuff, but the most important part is there has been a true legacy of Christian activism in this country. And it's always been in opposing right-wing Christianity.
Right. And do this next, David, but I was going to say, what you remind me of with what you just said there, isn't it the famous Gandhi line?
Yeah.
He said, I like your Christ, I don't like your Christians, along those lines. So anyway, let's go for it.
Well, here's my question, John. I mean, you've been sort of on the front lines with your debates and your shows and trying to remind people that it's not that complicated, that if you truly are a believer in, Christ and Christianity, or even Judaism for that matter, then you are progressive. But you've been outnumbered. I'm wondering what you make of James Tallarico in Texas and what he's doing, and whether you're optimistic or pessimistic that a guy like him, who cites his evangelical Christian beliefs for being a progressive, whether it's possible in this day and age to convince a majority of voters in a state like Texas to that point of view.
Well, I mean, look, we're all just carrying a baton, right? Like, we're all part of a movement that existed before we were born, and the struggle will go on after we're out of here, right? But Tallarico's great. I was literally just emailing with him last night because I'm sending a copy of this book. He's, I've only talked with him on social media. I've never interviewed him. But you know what gives me hope is the fact that that guy got booked on Rogan. That's what gives me hope. The fact that that guy could get booked on Rogan. And he does it in a much more articulate and genuine way. I'm a vulgar clown, okay? I'm a vaudevillian. I mean, I wrote this book. I have dick jokes in my book about Jesus. I'm like, people are going to give this to their moms, and it's going to cause a lot of
It's the only way to do it, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I've read a lot of these books in my life. I was raised by this, and I read all these theologians, and I promise you, I only use the word exegesis once in this whole book, and only to make fun of it. So it's not one of those. But Tallarico is the real deal, and there's a lot of guys like him. He's just good packaging, and he gets to be on camera doing it all the time. So the word gets out that way, because I believe people are starved for this. When I first began talking about Christianity, when my mother first gave me permission, it was after I debated Jerry Falwell on Bill Maher that my mom gave me permission to share about their past. And everywhere I've gone and done stand-up or broadcast or spoken, I always have so many wonderful people say to me, oh, I was raised believing that Christianity was supposed to be about love and service. And then I grew up to find it hijacked by these blow-dried televangelist racists and immigrant-haters. And they say the largest growing religious group in America. Well, some say it's Mormons, some say it's Islam, some say it's nuns, the none of the aboves. I wrote this book because I think the largest growing religious group in America are people who were raised religious and now consider themselves spiritual. because they're just turned off to all the hypocrisies of organized religion. And I don't think you need organized religion to have a spiritual life or to follow God or Jesus or whatever you're into. I don't think you need an authorized God fan club per se, but I value community. I'm not against religion at all. I'm against the fundamentalist kind, because whenever our atheist friends say, "Oh, religion's responsible for all the oppression of women and homophobia and violence," I always say, no, it is the hardcore right-wing fundamentalist wings of all religions. Right-wing Muslims, right-wing Jews, right-wing Christians. What do they all have in common? Women are always second-class citizens. The more conservative your religion is, violence is okay if my side does it. Sex is icky unless it's for procreation. They always focus on punishment instead of forgiveness and healing. And there's always this penchant for victimhood. Oh, I'm under attack, so anything shitty I do is justified. I mean, I think fundamentalist Jews and Christians and Muslims have more in common with each other than they do with the moderate and liberal members of their own religions. They're the ones causing all the problems. The overwhelming majority of Jews and Muslims and Christians are getting along just fine, right what we call the fuck now, and the media's not covering that, because guys like Jerry Falwell are better TV, and villains get the clicks.
Right. They want the conflict. I mean, it's everything, right? Going back to CNN creating Crossfire, and they're like, hey, just fight with each other. We don't want to actually educate anymore.
I think, in fairness, because David and I done tons of panel shows. I mean, I think it depends on the booking, like when I was at Current TV, I wound up doing panels where I would have moderate Republicans debate right-wing Republicans. I found that much more interesting, and having moderate Democrats debate left-wing Democrat. Like, I find that kind of stuff great. You can do that format where it's not just about strife. And I appreciate that TV, news has to get ratings. You have to try to find ways to make it entertaining. But you're right. I mean, I do a lot of these shows, and a lot of it is just following a real 20th century model of go out there and hate each other. And it's entertainment death.
Well, that's the problem, David. I mean, sorry, John. In the past, I think there are times, the only place I can think of where it was a panel that I would join was NPR. Right, where they wanted people to actually talk to each other, and they usually would add like a journalist to keep it less partisan. But every single time in my life that I can think of, I've been on MSNBC or CNN or anything, it's fight with that guy on the other side, and that's I mean that's the motivation there, and they come armed with these bullshit religious points, which, as you're saying, don't actually appear or they certainly don't appear in the New Testament.
Yeah.
So what is?
That's why I don't hate them. That's why I come in there as their happy liberal pal who knows the Bible better than them. And we
all saw with Scott Jennings. It's a lot of fun to watch.
I'm not going to hate that guy. He's running for office anyway. He's a money guy, and he's running.
He's running just south of me in Kentucky. I'm sure of it. He was a Mitch McConnell guy for years.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Usually, you have a political career, then you go to media. He's doing it the opposite way. So we'll see how it goes.
I don't need you to hate him. I just need you to keep making him look foolish, so that people can replay those clips.
Yeah, and I'm not into hating as well. But like the last time I was on with him, I said to him, like, look, I brought up the Bible. I brought up what it says about immigrants and God and Jesus, and I said, why should I listen to you and Donald Trump instead of God and Jesus? And his whole pivot was. And I don't mean any disrespect to him, but his whole thing was, we're not a theocracy. We're not a theocracy. And that's
how ironic that's what they would say.
They would love it. They've spent my whole life pretending the Bible's against abortion so they can go ahead and take rights away from citizens. So that they don't even mean that. But two, when they start saying we're not a theocracy, that's their way of saying, okay, you've called me out because my movement doesn't actually follow Jesus.
That's when you've won, John, is when he's saying
mascot. He's a mascot and a prop. So when they're suddenly going from talking tabernacles and Christian values, and we were founded as a blah, 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 to saying, we're not a theocracy.
Right. That's all he had left, because you showed him how much better you do the actual text.
No. He's a good debater. But like at the end of the day, I ask these MAGA folks all the time, give me one actual thing Jesus taught. And your listeners can do this. Ask your uncle racist and your aunt dead inside, when they come over. The one who's still mad about Pride Month when it's Thanksgiving, that one.
Exactly. They give him a whole month? I mean, a whole month? Why do they get a whole month? Yeah,
I'm the Grand Marshal of Heterosexual Shame Parade, where I come from.
And now they give the blacks a month, and they give who are they going to give it to next? Yeah,
I know.
We have a few in my family, absolutely.
White heterosexual Christian men are really sick of taking it from the man. Can I just give him a shout out?
I know.
But I
John, a
always
lot of
ask my
people.
MAGA people with respect, because here's my thing. I wrote this book because it's a guide. I'm not pretending it's literature. It's a guide to the common arguments for all the issues that divide us on death penalty, healthcare, feminism, you name it. And what I always say to my MAGA friends is, okay, can you please cite one actual teaching of Jesus that your movement and Donald Trump fight for, prioritize, crusade for legislatively? One thing in the Gospels that Jesus actually commands or teaches that your movement fights for. Now, I really recommend this to everybody because I think it's better, even if you're an atheist, if you can engage them on the scripture, okay? They won't agree with you and you won't win them over, but they may appreciate, if it's your loved one, they may appreciate you took the time to talk about it in terms of scripture. And most of these people haven't really read the Bible. And they're counting on you not having read the Bible either.
They don't know anything.
When I
They
say to
don't.
the MAGAs, like, what's a teaching of Jesus? Number one answer I've got in the last 9 years, abortion.
Of course.
And then you explain the Bible's not against abortion. God asserts that a fetus is property in Exodus 21, and a woman's life has more value in his eye. God gives abortion tips for unfaithful pregnant wives in Numbers chapter 5. Let me tell you Gentiles about Passover sometime. God's not really all that pro-life about little ones. And Jesus is against the death penalty. You know, you tell them Judaism doesn't ban abortion. That's why abortions are legal and free in Israel right now. And they don't know this because Fox News hasn't told them to protest Israel for having legal and free abortions. It's all about weaponized outrage and manipulating these folks. So abortion, no. Jesus opposed the death penalty. You're not on Jesus' side.
Right.
So the next thing they'll say is strong border. And then we go into, no.
The stranger.
Commanded to welcome the stranger. The
Both
third
a
thing
great
they'll
album
say,
by Billy Joel and something awesome that Jesus had to
still
say.
his greatest album, 50 years on. Yes, it is.
It is, yeah.
John, I got to ask you because people from the book will recognize that in-depth knowledge and experience that you've had with religion. A lot of us also know you for your comedy and your media appearances. I want to sort of combine some of that and sort of step back to like the 50,000-foot view of the big sort of news today in the world of sort of comedy, satire, and media. And that is South Park just released this episode where they just brutalized Donald Trump. Now, South Park, and for people who haven't seen it, you can find it on YouTube. They make Donald Trump look even fatter and flabber than he is. He has a small,
which is difficult to do.
Support as well. He's a small penis, the whole thing. They do this entire episode about this. Now, this comes in the context of Paramount, which owns Comedy Central, which puts on South Park.
I was thinking about that.
The $16 million on behalf of CBS. Because of this ridiculous lawsuit.
Yes.
CBS and Paramount agreed to pay in order to try to make it easier for this merger to go through between Paramount and Skydance. But then there's Comedy Central, this sort of little evil part of, I suppose, of Paramount, which goes and gives a half an hour sticking it to Donald Trump. And apparently Trump is going crazy over this, is seething.
I can't imagine his aides allowing him to see it. I can't imagine. If I was in his orbit, my life would be focused on keeping his eyes from watching the most powerful 22 minutes of television of the year. And I hate to say that because I didn't think anything could be better than Andor Season 2.
Well, the courage...
And he does have a very small penis which talks to him. So if you want to see that, folks,
guys.
I know. It's the whole thing.
The context is broader because Paramount just gave these guys $1.5 billion on Monday. They have to produce 10 episodes of South Park a year, and now Paramount controls all of the residual rights for all the reruns of South Park, which, let's be honest, are worth a lot more than old episodes of The Colbert Show. It's all about money. So they just took $1.5 billion of Paramount's money and then did this, where literally Jesus is... the scene with Jesus in the end of this has got to be, I don't want to ruin it for anybody. And I don't want to say too much if folks haven't seen it yet. The penis is getting all the hype, but it's the Sermon on the Mount scene that
that's the most impactful
masterpiece.
That is fantastic. I just meant, I was thinking more in terms of, I know which part will hit Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah.
The non-intellectual, and the most upset.
Yes. It's brilliant, but it's also against his supporters too, because it's all about the townsfolk who are so happy because they voted for this guy. So now they can say faggot and retard again. And suddenly they don't like what he's doing. And that's the plot of it. And it goes through, if you've never watched South Park, it'll be confusing because it goes back to Trump's first term when Mr. Garrison was the stand-in and they put that to bed. It'll be confusing if you don't know, but it's cute. But they go back to 26 years to the South Park movie and make Donald Trump have the same voice and mannerisms of gay Saddam Hussein in bed with Satan. And it's a sequel to the South Park movie Bigger, Longer, and Uncut from 1999. And I think it's going to probably be the episode of TV that these two guys are remembered for. I tell you, we're doing this recording, but right when this is broke, and this is going to make such an impact on the landscape. There has not been a greater artist protest against Donald Trump than what happened last night.
And doing it right in the context of Colbert, too. Go ahead.
And
David.
I was going to ask you, I mean, because it took me totally by surprise. Like, suddenly it has renewed my sense of optimism that, okay, people are willing to stand up and show some courage. And I imagine that, Comedy Central will get sued by Trump and some ridiculous, but for them to actually
daring
say, okay,
him to. The whole episode is about how he's going to sue us. He sues everyone. They're daring him to sue.
Yeah.
And
He'll
so
prove them right if he sues.
Were you surprised when you heard that this came out?
I heard it came out. I got off the air at midnight and I was reading about it on the air. So I stayed up and watched the rerun at 12:30 because I didn't want to hear too much about it before I saw it. And I told my wife not to read too much about it until she can see it. And everybody, like, we're talking about it. You're not getting too much about it, but it's going to be seen. It's going to be seen again. It's going to be seen again. And it's going to be like the last episode of MASH for some people. It's going to be a piece of pop culture that affects our cultural landscape in incredibly broad, deep-reaching ways. There's people who are going to be reached. There's young people who are going to be reached. There's guys in their 20s who are going to be reached by this. And,
Right, a lot of young white guys who watch that show, or middle-aged white guys, the kinds of folks who vote for Trump, and I think that's a huge thing about this. Nothing huge in the video.
It's the boldest thing I've ever seen on TV. It's the boldest act of protest I've ever seen on television, ever.
Right. And then we know the Streisand effect, because Trump, there are probably going to be a half dozen Truth Social posts coming like, oh, Matt Stone, he's completely stinks. They're not talented at all. They're no, And he's
they'll all come at 2 a.m., by the way, when the Russians wake up. That's when
exactly. And he'll insult them, and then Streisand effect, everybody's going to want to see it that much more. So, I mean, he's going to only make it fly further out there.
Keep blocking the Epstein files. Please keep blocking
I know.
them. I mean, like, when will we learn? Democrats were so stupid to let George Santos ever leave the Congress. I tell you, I would have kept that guy around and made him the face of the party as long as possible.
No, I know. I've said that about Marjorie Taylor Greene. We need her.
We're going to be so sick of Epstein files, okay? And a year ago, remember way back a year ago, when the world made a little more sense and every single issue somehow traced back to Joe Biden's age? Well, every single issue is going to trace back to the Epstein files for the foreseeable future into the fall, beyond Mike Johnson's cowardly, amoral recess, because people aren't going to let go of this. The MAGA civil war is going to linger.
But he says he's a Christian, John.
Well,
the real villain of my book is the mainstream media, because none of them will ever say.
Now you're speaking my language.
Like, when did anyone ever say to Mike Pence, where in the book does Jesus drive the gay wedding cakes out of the temple? Like, I wanted one journalist to say to Mike Pence, to say to Mike Johnson, why should we believe Trump supporters care about the teachings of Jesus?
Right. I have to say my one line here, and go ahead, which is, this is why folks who've read our Substack and seen all of that after the firing of Colbert, I showed the whole Paramount chart and went into, Jim Acosta, who of course is here now and is independent, is on Substack, and other folks who've been forced out, all these places. The biggest villain, and people still I don't think they fully get it, is corporate media. Because if we didn't have monopoly media, 6 entities with so many conflicts of interest that their conflicts of interest have conflicts of interest, that own 90% of what we see and we hear and we play and we whatever, then people would get the context of who the people are. As you just said, they would, when I say I'm a Christian, they would say, what does that mean? What do you believe? They would follow up and do that, and they don't.
But
I wonder if we've reached the point where, I mean, the reason that the media is focused on Epstein is not for wonderful reasons, is because there's the scintillating aspect to it. But
that's all it is.
That's all it is. But that's fine. And I wonder, John, to your point about how the Epstein story is not going away. I mean, there were 3 Republicans last night on a House subcommittee who went with Democrats to subpoena from the Justice Department the Epstein files. I mean, the Trump White House considers this the ultimate betrayal. So
God bless him.
What is it in your mind that's causing, what is it about the Epstein story, the Epstein case, which is causing the Republicans to defy Donald Trump and keep this going against his wishes?
Do you want my macro version of that?
Either, whichever one you want.
Macro, micro, whatever you got for it.
As soon as this budget was signed, the people who own this country didn't need this embarrassing racist reality TV clown anymore.
Yeah.
The oligarchs are done with him. They got their goddamn ugly, dirty tax cut. They got their
Permanent, right. They got it. Yeah.
crypto bills passed. The billionaires have raped the flag, and they don't need this clown anymore. He's not one of them. They play golf on his golf courses. He's not one of them. They do not need him anymore. Like they do not need the Bush family anymore. They are done with him. So I'm
and
sorry,
even
man.
more so,
We can
he's
talk
so
all day about Pam Bondi and timing, but this happened as soon as the budget was signed and then the crypto bills were signed. Boom. So you'll see less and less support because Rupert Murdoch has cut him what we call the fuck loose. And when you're suing the Wall Street Journal for $20 billion, the Wall Street Journal will be around long after Donald Trump's arteries have completed their mission.
And your point is exactly right, because Rupert Murdoch was never about Trump. Rupert Murdoch was about the Republican Party.
Massey hates him.
It was a vehicle to lower taxes. Right.
Tulsi Gabbard hates him.
Right. It was a vehicle, but the big corporate guys, I'm saying, it was a vehicle to cut their taxes permanently, to get rid of regulations, to allow them to suck up ever more. I mean, let's all remember that what Murdoch has right now, and Clinton, we have to be honest here, with that 1996 crappy Telecommunications Act, in the past, Rupert Murdoch could not have owned the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, Fox News. You could only have one outlet in each market because we realized the danger and that came from the kind of mass propaganda that Murdoch does. But he got what he wanted. He's gotten further what he wanted. And I think you could not be more right. Is that suddenly the populist wing, all these folks, and when I say populist wing, the ones who pretend to be populist, first with Iran, now with Epstein, these other things, they're all suddenly turning on him because they got what they wanted out of this asshole. They've gotten.
The media is going to focus on how the racists and the morons are declaring war on each other. And that's an interesting story, and it's fascinating because we're witnessing a cult blink. We've all been waiting to see what it would take. I always said the only way he would lose fans is if he wore a Black Lives Matter shirt. And I think that's true. I think right. he could eat a baby and they'd still support him. But a Black Lives Matter shirt, they'd go. But maybe the real struggle we should have been looking at was the oligarchs and Trump, how he is doing with those above him.
It's always been
those below him, because the time, I mean, David, you're a lot smarter than me, but the timing of this after the crypto bill, and I know Pam Bondi talked to him in May, and now MAGA knows Pam Bondi talked to him in May, and he knew he was in these files before he called it a hoax, before he blocked the release. So we'll see how obedient and unmanly the cult can be, but I mean, it's not going to get better for this guy.
I also wonder if part of it is sort of the perfect storm. I think I agree with your timing assessment of it all, but there's also, for the last several years, they created this monster with this whole nonsense about the Democrats and a pedophilia ring. They fed it to their people over and over and over
again.
You
mean their media or the oligarchs themselves?
Well, the media, conservative
the oligarchs
media.
own a lot of the right-wing media, and
after feeding this stuff,
That's why when you're on social media, I mean, you're going to hear the word pedo and groomer like they're a noun, verb, and adverb in every sentence.
Right. And so even if they release, some of the files, and they say, here's some of the names, if there's not a laundry list of Democrats and connections to pedophilia, their audience will still not be satisfied. Their audience will think you're withholding something. There's nothing that they're going to be able to do to satisfy the MAGA crowd with this.
The MAGA will be divided on this forever. And a lot of them, we see these miserable Russian paid off podcasters telling them all to get in line. Some will be forever, but when this is all done, we have to remember that they're never going to release names because it's not about the famous ones. It's about the donor names who donate to both parties. And that's the irony. It's because of that both parties will make sure this thing never gets released. And that's going to both save Trump and doom Trump forever. But the real thing here is, I had Bonnie Watson Coleman on the other night, the great congresswoman from New Jersey, who 80 years old and just got shoved at that ICE concentration camp in Newark. And I was like, look, I know y'all Democrats, you have to talk about healthcare, you have to talk about education, but will you guys be prioritizing Epstein as well as an issue? And she's like, we have to. And they do have to, because if the Democrats can't bring the fight to this guy on shielding child rape,
Jesus
then
Christ.
Trump will know that the Democrats will not fight for anything.
Just the way you talk about, the sort of talk often about religion, and I talk a lot about messaging on there. Jesus Christ, build a narrative, for fuck's sake, that fits underneath economic issues and Epstein. It's
And you know what the
not
narrative
hard.
is? You know what the
Epstein was a
narrative is?
billionaire, or a multimillionaire. Epstein was with these billionaires in pictures. It's not hard to make these connections, for
I'll
fuck's
tell you the
sake.
narrative. Here's the narrative.
Go for it. Yes.
You need Bill Clinton's address? Because that's it. Look at Governor Spitzer, our old pal, David.
Yeah.
Look at John Edwards. Look at throughout the whole history of all of these look at every one of these Democrats. Democrats eject them. Republicans reelect them. Okay, right. Democrats actually take this stuff seriously. Took Me Too seriously. Al Franken, for a goofy, stupid picture, got driven out of the Senate.
Right, and their Senate candidate in Alabama was calling 13-year-olds. Right,
and they refuse to run on this record. But they'll do it. But the reality is, and Democrats need to trumpet this, if the evidence showed beyond a doubt that both Bill Clinton and Donald Trump interfered with underage girls, raped children on this island, Democrats would reject Bill Clinton. Republicans would reject the evidence. And that's the difference. And that's the narrative.
And that's the narrative. But I think also, again, we've never built a narrative for who they are, for the fact that they talk about this shit all the time. But here we've got their Senate candidate in Alabama was calling a 13-year-old in trigonometry class and asking her out. You know,
rejection
the longest
is reflection. Gen Z beat the Dems to it.
There you go. The longest serving Republican House Speaker, Denny Hastert, fondled teenagers. Longest serving Republican House Speaker. This is not difficult if they'll just fucking do it.
Democrats won't do it. They will not do it.
Yeah, that's my biggest problem. That's my biggest problem, is that if we would build these narratives and stuff.
Bill Clinton.
Yeah, well, you know, they need to get the fuck over it, because as you pointed out, we've had Elliot Spitzer, we had Anthony Weiner, and we've had our own
Weiner. And the only guy to sex scandal with no actual sex.
I know.
My God, if Anthony Weiner just had a mistress like a normal congressman,
what the fuck? I know, he's addicted to. I guess his mistress was his phone. The problem here is that the difference between us and them is that we've had a couple of those cases. I still have this up here. Where is it? You know, where's my Larry Craig? Oh, there it is. I still have this that somebody gave me once at a conference. This is my Larry Craig moving his feet around in the bathroom stall.
And here's what you say, Democrats. More Republicans have been arrested in public restrooms than transgender women. Right?
There you go.
Yeah.
Right. This is not difficult.
It's not
Just
hard,
do
guys.
it.
But again, I want to go back to your media point. Media point, Cliff, because two things. I am very proud to do a show on the only 24/7 liberal talk channel coast to coast on radio, Sirius XM Progress. And if it's entertaining, people will watch, right? If you do entertaining programming, people will watch. They're so scared. The media is not liberal. The media is terrified of being called liberal. The media is as liberal as the corporations that own it, but they're all terrified of being called liberal. But what if you program that way on purpose? And what if, because Al Gore, we thought he was trying to do it a few years back, but more importantly, J.D. Vance went to every racist who lives in their mom's basement to do a podcast last year. And Democrats still seem to think this battle's going to be won while having a complimentary coffee in the MSNBC or CNN green room.
Yep.
The reality is Democrats have got to start doing shows like yours all over Substack, all over Instagram. Democrats have got to do every freaking podcast. They've got to get out there and go back to grassroots. They've got to give us a fight. They've got to show us that they're willing to fight, and they can't do that if they're terrified of donors. But you look at Sanders and AOC selling out football stadiums. My God, it's there and it's entertaining. And some broadcast entity is going to realize we can make money off of these liberals.
Yeah, I'm just, and again, if this sounds self-serving or whatever, I'm just going to say it. We came here, you know, David has been here from the beginning. We built this platform. When this is over, you know, we're going to send out an email with this. And if it's like others, it's going to be opened by somewhere between 450 and 500,000 people, which is more than some MSNBC shows get during the day. So people don't understand.
I would have cleaned up.
You know, and I'm up. I know. I'm sorry. I left my my Jufro is going on here.
Where's my tie?
Exactly. You know what? Like, as far as I'm concerned, I'm only saying that to say, look at what in 4 months we were able to build here on Substack. That's everybody out there watching has helped make this happen. We can do this on other platforms. The corporate media cannot be the left's mouthpiece. We can't act like they're going to share our message. The only way you get to them.
But we can't give up on them either. We can't give up on them either.
What I always say, John, you nailed it before, which is they need to be looked at. the way they need to be looked at is exactly what you said about why the Epstein thing is being covered. As somebody who was a PR guy for a long time, you have to give them spectacle. They're not going to cover it because it's the right thing to do or whatever. You give them something that is spectacle, that's different, that's crazy, that's sensational. They will cover it. And that's how you get Republicans.
Then this brings it back to my book, because that's why they put the Jerry Falwells and the Pat Robertsons and the Jimmy Swaggarts on TV all the time and introduced them as Christian leaders when I was a kid. Not because they gave a rat's ass about the things Jesus talked about. They were good TV. They were villains. Falwell was evil, and people hate-watched him before they knew that was a thing. So, right. I mean, I get it. The media's job is to keep us watching and get the numbers and the eyeballs and the ratings, but there's ways they can do that and have it be good for democracy, good for civics, good for the least of us, and I think still make it entertaining, too.
I agree. Absolutely. Go ahead, Dave.
Does that sense of scintillation and sort of drama, I wonder if that also plays out in terms of real policy looking ahead into 2026. And what I mean is, yes, we're going to have Epstein because it's scintillating and there's salaciousness to it. But when the media also realizes that, hey, every time you tell a story about a local hospital closing down and these people are losing Medicaid and they're starving, that also sadly makes for good TV. And it's hard to not watch it. What does that do in terms of the 2026? Do you think between Medicare, between Epstein, Democrats are in the driver's seat?
It depresses Republican turnout for the midterms.
Absolutely.
Because it's kind of icky, and maybe I'm not going to come down from the mountain and vote this year because it's kind of, but you're right, David. The Democrats have a year and a half to blow this. And we just witnessed last week all but one Republican members of the House hand them a gift wrap 2026 campaign ad when they all voted to block the release of the Epstein files. They chose to protect child rapists.
Which, by the way, should be on TV right now, and should forget TV. There should be a digital ad across platforms everywhere right now, and that's what we do. We don't respond.
But Democrats also, and I've never been a Democrat, but I root for them. What they also have to do is stop listening to the media telling them they're losers and stop apologizing. I'm so tired of hearing how low their polling is, because here's the deal. Their issues don't poll poorly. On the issues, Democrats, liberals are substantially more popular with the majority of Americans. The majority of us support women's reproductive freedoms. The majority of us support taxing billionaires more. We support paid family leave like all of our capitalists enjoy, our capitalist allies. The majority of us don't want to put people in jail for weed anymore. The majority is on the side of the Democrats in terms of the issues, if not the actual personalities.
Well, so even a majority of Republicans want Medicare for all, which is, when you explain it to, so it's there.
Yes, and tell us by saying I'm patriotic enough to believe that American citizens deserve the same access to health care as our capitalist allies overseas.
This is what I've always said, which is we don't make the argument when they're make America great again. You guys have made America shit. We were proud of the America that gave people health care. We were proud of the America that created Medicare, that created Medicaid, that built the Hoover Dam. It did all these things before you cut all the funding for your few billionaire friends so they can spend time in Bermuda and wherever the fuck else. But they're not here helping the American economy. And it's just another of those many arguments that we do not make, and it drives me insane.
Let me point out one more thing, because the gaslighting has been so thick, all right? Donald Trump has been running for president for 9 years. Kamala Harris was in this race for 100 days. And she got the highest number of votes, the third highest number of votes of anyone to ever run for the office. The media talks about the humiliating failure, but I don't hear any media talking about how Kamala Harris got more votes than Ronald Reagan ever got, than Bill Clinton ever got, than Barack Obama ever got. It was an extraordinary achievement. 100 days.
Right, and even the percent she got, I'm sorry, there's nothing humiliating about that.
No, the other thing the media doesn't mention, again, the Democrats' issues are more popular. Kamala Harris was much more popular than she's given credit for. I won't even go into the theories that Greg Palast has documented about how this thing might have been fakakta. But now I lost my third point.
We used fakakta with a couple of Jews here, which we appreciate.
I'll be Gentile with you. But Democrats don't need to be ashamed of all this. I mean, she did great, and their policies are more popular. And here's the last point I forgot. The last three elections, the majority of Americans who showed up to vote have voted against Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He's never gotten more than 50% of the vote 3 times in a row. He's never had more than 1/3 of the country on his side. The number's getting smaller. Democrats need to start worrying about how they're going to beat up President J.D. Vance very, very soon.
Yeah, I mean, when you start looking at his hand and the rest of that stuff, but I mean, I've just made this argument too, and it drives me nuts. I refer to it as the Reagan crouch, and I think we're almost out of it. And it's not an ageist thing. It's that there's a certain generation that thought, oh my God, Ronnie's so popular. He's a charismatic actor. And Democrats went on the defensive because corporate media and Ronald Reagan and all this shit. And at that edge, there's a few of them who've been great, like a Sheldon Whitehouse. But a lot of them have always felt like we're the losers. And you can tell by the way they talk and the way they act. And I'm just going to say this quickly because you brought this up, John. Like, you made the broader point. It's true that we are literally in the majority on everything. But what a lot of people don't even understand is there's 3 or 4 issues you may have brought up in there. I know you mentioned one of them. We're north of 80%. I mean, 80-something% want family and medical leave, paid family and medical leave. Universal background checks on guns often polls at 90%. Like, we're no longer talking.
That's more popular than Christmas.
Right.
More popular than Christmas.
Right. We're not talking about stuff where we're like, oh, we poll at 52%. We have a whole number of issues where there's another half dozen to a dozen. We poll north of 70%. You can destroy them if you will get your narrative, your message, and go the fuck after them. Yeah, that is how to do it.
By the way, I want to thank some of the people who've been writing in, and one of them, I've been looking at some of the questions here, and John, this is a good one, and it's good for you, Cliff, as well. Somebody wrote in and said, "What do Democrats do about Texas?" Which sort of takes us back to James Tallarico, but I mean, when you look at a state like Texas, where they're talking about how their response to the flood disaster was a role model. They don't see problems. They don't see miscommunications. They don't see antiquated systems. They see, oh yeah, we did it the right way. What do Democrats do about a state like that? Do you
can I just say something quickly? Because I don't want John to leave without answering this, because he'll answer this well. Good friend of ours who's always on all of these, Cynthia Rice, wanted to know your thoughts on Opus Dei. So start with Texas. Maybe they're both related, and then see if you can get to Opus Dei.
As far as Texas goes, I'm old enough to remember once upon a time Howard Dean ran for president and didn't work, and he ran the DNC and became the unsung hero of the Obama election with the 50-state strategy.
Yep.
I'd be sending Bernie and AOC into Alabama if I was running the DNC. I would be sending Elizabeth Warren in to Texas. I'd be sending every Democrat who's good at talking about how the economy's rigged against working people to speak as much as possible in every red state for any reason. Texas is going to change, but it's going to take a while, and these purple fantasies are great, and we'll get there at some point, and it's going to be gradual. A mayor here, a congressperson there. My greatest fear is that the people of Germany needed to see Berlin in rubble before they understood their Fuhrer had been bullshitting them. And I don't want to think about how bad.
Let's not get there.
I don't want to think about how bad it's going to get, and that's why Jeffrey Epstein may help save democracy. And let me just say, I kind of like it when a dead pedophile hurts living rapists. I think it's great.
There's some symmetry there that I kind of enjoy.
And what about Opus Dei?
Opus Dei is like all the rest of it. The Catholic Secret Society. It's fun. It's goofy. It's Opus Dei is a lot of you can look on it as a lot of Dan Brown kind of stuff, business. But
they control the Supreme Court.
They control the Supreme Court. I mean, Christian nationalism only makes up about 1/3 of the population. And yet they make up 2/3 of 10% of us are pure Christian nationalists, and like another 19% of our Christian nationalists adjacent, but they make up 2/3 of the Supreme Court. And this Opus Dei stuff is, again, like the worst, most corrosive kind of fundamentalism, because it's fundamentalism for rich, educated guys. It's all about power. Opus Dei, and let me make sure I say this very clearly, Opus Dei doesn't give a shit about the things Jesus commanded. Opus Dei doesn't give a shit about Jesus's teachings. They don't care about the least of us. Opus Dei cares about power and control. That's what they're about. So all their secret society, what's Dan Brown's book? The what code? I'm sorry, I can't.
No, the Da Vinci Code.
Da
The
Vinci
Da Vinci
Where it
Code.
starts off with the
all that,
dude who's like whipping himself in the ass.
Yeah. Hey, that was Pope John Paul II. He whipped himself while he was Pope. I was raised in this. I get it.
All right.
I mean,
as long as he enjoyed it, what a guy does in the privacy of his home, I'm okay with.
I mean, it's kind of you could say that kind of masochism is a form of spiritual narcissism, but that's a whole other conversation. But I was raised by a woman who was in the convent and who was broken down emotionally by nuns. And my mother came to eventually call it a cult years later. A cult that did a lot of good, but a cult that conditioned women to equate humility with self-loathing. So I get that stuff, but that's not Opus Dei. These guys aren't whipping themselves. These guys have very fancy rings and they have their secret society and they do their little dress up and that's all great. They don't do anything to help further the teachings of Jesus. They're about earthly power, just like Al-Qaeda, just like all these other fundamentalists. They don't actually care about making the world a better place.
So do you think it seems that the Pope quite purposely picks his language to literally refute everything Donald Trump says is the whole,
Chicago Joe.
I mean, it's pretty sweet as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I'll bring him around to being a Yankees fan, but otherwise, he's pretty awesome. And
I think he's into underdogs. He'll go with the Mets first. I got to tell you
that you're probably right about that. Yeah.
I love a Chicago Pope. Do you love it? Like a Pope?
Oh my God! I love a Chicago Pope who speaks like he does in the way he does about the issues he does. Do you think he can speak to some American Catholics who are swing voters?
He already
some
has.
of the and so do you think he is helping turn some of these folks against Trump?
I
like to hear it.
I think he's helping turning some of these folks towards decency. The Trump part is just de facto. I love a Chicago Pope. I love a guy who can forgive your sins and tell you where to hide a body. I just love it. I love a guy who's going to finish a mass instead of saying peace be with you, just be like, we done? We good? We good?
I know.
Like,
put his head on backwards and eat a fucking hot dog.
The whole, liberals are mad he's not more liberal, conservatives mad he's not more conservative, and the rest of the world is like, he's an American who speaks more than one language and doesn't own any guns? What is this?
Right? Exactly.
When he appointed an immigrant from Vietnam to be the bishop of San Diego, and the next week that bishop was there at the immigration court scaring off these ICE thug cowards with his clerical collar, it's going to be a really interesting couple of years. And again, he can't go too far because their job is to get old ladies to put money in a basket every week. So there's only so much reform they can do at once because that's the job of organized religion, getting old ladies to put money in baskets.
Yeah.
When I was a kid,
we have to put go ahead. Sorry.
I'd go to NYU Catholic Center and they'd be welcoming gay couples and celebrating them, the Vatican. And then I'd go down south to see my parents and they'd be preaching the homophobe. And that's how I learned it's a business. They'll send the liberal priest to the liberal area, conservative priest, conservative area, whatever's going to pull in the funds for the boys back home. But this Pope is already, by indirectly making a statement, has made such a powerful statement. And when this bishop told every clergy that they should start showing up to immigration court, that
I don't know itself was incredible.
It won't change hearts and minds of racists, but it will get people off the fence.
But culturally, yes. And culturally, sadly, it may not save certain folks right away, but it changes minds over time when they see what side these guys are on and what they're speaking about. Like when you speak and you quote from the Bible, when these guys quote from the Bible and they're helping immigrants, maybe some people can learn a thing or two.
Imagine your administration being so evil that you make Harvard University and the Catholic bishops look like the good guys.
It is a really awesome point.
Hey, John, before we go, I got to say, and I want to promote the book again, but for those of us who have worked with you, who have, followed you through the years, you are an absolute treasure, not just in terms of religion and in terms of politics and media. You are a national treasure. And so many of us love you dearly and are so glad that you've written this book and that you're out there and that you've got the nightly show on Sirius. And we're just, thrilled to have you on this program as well.
Go ahead, John.
It means a lot coming from you, David. I've admired you for a really long time, and I'm just beginning to crawl my way back in the TV. I had to I did a syndicated show a couple of years ago, left a bad taste in my mouth. So writing this book was a good way for me to get back into more media appearances and stuff. And I'm trying to inch back into that world now. But I've admired your work, and I loved working with you. Having you on my TV show was an honor, and it's very kind. And Cliff knows how highly I regard him. So thank you both.
Well, no, I have to say this because I make it a point of saying this. having both of you guys on here, who are two of the most talented people in this business, and then you get off camera, and I will tell all of you that these two guys are exactly the same people off camera as they are on, and I can't say that about a whole lot of people in our industry. You know, you both are just incredibly talented and incredibly good people, and that second part
It's getting a little thick now. Getting a little thick.
No, I'm sorry, I don't care.
Put away
Okay,
the reach gun,
hold
pal. Put away the reach
on.
gun.
No, I mean, in all seriousness, though, like, this is important, okay? Because that sends a message to people.
I'm going to have to tell so many dick jokes to break the tension after this. Love that. I'm sorry.
This is what this show is about. In between making points about St. Francis, we're telling dick jokes.
It sort of it reminds me of a friend of mine who was moving from Pittsburgh and is moving from Pittsburgh to New York. And, you know, anybody who's from the Midwest knows, oh, Pittsburgh's great. People are kind. And my advice to him was, look, just remember, not everybody in New York, they're not all douchebags.
Right. John Fugelsang is there, and I grew up there.
At the same with
New Yorkers are kind. LA people are more polite, but New York people are more kind. Let's put it that way.
It's the same with media, folks. Not everybody in the media is a self-centered asshole. You know, it goes on and on and on. So, you know,
there's lots of great. Listen, you're talking about the difference between media and journalism, right?
Yeah,
I mean, there's lots of great journalists who work in corporate media, and a lot of them do a great job. And you guys know there's a lot of good people who work at Fox News too. I go there. I crack jokes at the commercial breaks about Hannity, and the crew cracks up. Like there's people just paying their families, but they're working for evil empires.
Right. When I'm talking about corporate media, I'm talking about the automatrons, who are the ones who either are determining the path, or the ones who are high enough up to stop it and don't care. There always are some good people at some of these individual outlets, and I try to make that distinction as often as I can. But I will just say, I have not, you know, people could be like, oh, you're just saying that because they're on. I haven't ended a lot of my other shows in this fashion. Like, I love talking, especially talking to the two of you guys at the same time. I can do this shit all day. So, you know, to quote Captain America, I can do this shit all day. Or something. He said something of that nature. He didn't usually curse, but you know, he said, I can do this all day.
This was another good show. John, great to see you as always, my friend. Take care. Cliff,
buy his book, everybody.
Buy the book.
Once again, it's called Separation of Church and Hate, a sane person's guide to taking back the Bible from fundamentalist fascists and flock-fleecing frauds. And it's on sale right now at fine independent bookstores or not evil websites.
And make sure when you and James Tellerico get together on some show, whatever it is, make sure we get those links, because
I'm working on him. I'm working on it.
Absolutely need to. So I will say also you need to follow John Fugelsang. It's very hard to find. It's at John Fugelsang here on.
It's very hard to spell, sir.
Well, I have the name Schecter, so you know. And then
you're phonetically possible. I'm proof that God gives the most ethnic names to the absolute whitest people. So,
dude, I've got C's and H's and all sorts of shit we took on the boat, dropped off on the boat. You know, we don't make any sense.
Oh, listen, my people jumped the boat in Brooklyn Harbor to fight the Union Army. We skipped the first Fugelsang skipped Ellis Island and just went to fighting.
Oh, are you an Irishman?
That was a Danishman, but I'm Irish, Danish, German, which is why.
There you go. Because I know they came right in and were like, all right, where do we go fight?
Exactly right. Yes. But thank you.
Thank you for being here.
By the way, my people added the E to make my name sound easier to spell. So thanks, great grandpa.
Thank you as well, buddy.
And make sure to follow David at David Shuster. David is also a contributor to us at blueamp.co. Please subscribe. Know that we're doing this sound check fund where we are giving grants to smaller creators to help create an ecosystem here so that we're not alone, that there's a broader, so consider a paid subscription so we can continue that program. And otherwise, just thanks for being here. We really appreciate it, guys.
Fugelsang! Woohoo! Thanks, and guys. We'll talk soon.
Should be the end. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Vaya con Dios.
Peace.
All right, folks. Take care. Thanks for watching. And we'll be back. Same bat time, same bat channel, 2 p.m. Eastern next week.